let me begin with a couple of my favourite dad jokes. Ready for some dad jokes? Dad joke number one. Stewardess, would you care for some orange juice, sir? Passenger, if it needs me to. Take a second. Dad joke number two. A man finds a genie in the bottle and the genie says, what would you like, sir? And the man replies, I want to be happy. So now he works down a mine with 6 other dwarves. Look, it's that second joke that I want to pick up on today, because that joke asks one of the biggest questions in life, doesn't it? What do you want? What do you and I want? Now, the reason I mention this is because across the month of October, our church is looking at an even more important question than what do we want in life. So as Malcolm said before, we've set aside the entire month of October for guest services. Now, what does that mean? It means we're focusing on topics that non-church people might be interested in hearing. So our bread and butter here at Elwood Anglican, what we do most weeks is we work our way through either a book of the Bible or a section of the Bible across a term, and we just go from passage to passage to see what that section of the Bible is talking about. But for this month, we're focusing on just one passage, right? So it's John 1, 1 to 18, commonly known as John's prologue. And the reason we're focusing on this passage is because it answers the 2 biggest questions in life. All right, and those questions are, who is God and how can I draw near to God? Right? Who is God and how can I draw near to God? You see, if there really is a higher power out there, and look, over 90% of the world's population still believe that, then before we ask ourselves, what do I want in life, there are some deeper questions that need assessing. And they start with, like, who is this higher power, all right, that is out there, followed by how am I to relate to such a being? And these are the 2 questions that John's prologue is answering. Who is God and how can I draw near to him? And the particular aspect we're looking at this week, so we're looking at across 4 weeks, all right, so the particular aspect we're looking at this week is the fact that God is eternal. He is eternal. So we read this in the very first verse. John's Gospel begins with, in the beginning was the Word. Now, the word, capital W word there, refers to Jesus. So what John is saying is, Jesus was at the beginning. Right? Before all things in creation had their being, Jesus was already there. All right? He had no beginning. Jesus is from all eternity. He is uncreated, as theologians call it. But we're also told in verse 1, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So what do we learn here? Firstly, we learn that Jesus is God, okay, but also Jesus is in a relationship with God. Now, it's at this point that most other religions, not to mention most other secular people, they object. All right, they say, look, this is confusing. This whole notion of the Trinity, of one God in 3 persons, it's irrational, it's inferior, it is unworthy of enlightened Westerners such as ourselves. Yet what I want to suggest to us today is that this view of God gives us more wonder, more joy, and more hope than any other worldview can even think to offer. See, what I want us to see today is that this notion that the Word was with God grants the Christian more wonder, more joy, and more hope than any other worldview, and in particular, any other view of God. And I've got 3 points to help us see this today. You got on the inside of your news sheet, the sermon outline there. So we're going to begin by unpacking just what it means for the Son to be with the Father from all eternity. So I've titled the first point, The Wonder of Withness. Now, withness is not a real word. I made it up, but I pray you're going to understand what I'm talking about when I say withness. They are with each other, okay? We're then going to look at how this withness plays out in our world today. So I've titled that The Joy of Withness, all right? The wonder of withness, the joy of withness, and then we're going to conclude by looking at what this withness has in store for us in the future. So I've titled that The Hope of Withness. So we're not looking at love, joy and hope today. We're looking at wonder, joy and hope today. The wonder, joy and hope of being with God and with others. So let's dive in. So like I said, John's Gospel begins by telling us that God the Son, titled the Word in this passage, was with God the Father for all eternity. Now down in verse 18, that little last verse that we read there, it says that the Son is in the closest relationship with the Father. Now in the original Greek, all right, so the New Testament was originally written in Greek, it literally says that the Son was in the bosom of the Father. That's what it literally says. Now let's just think about that for a second. All right? How many people have the privilege of being able to be in your bosom? What do I mean by that? I mean, if you're sitting on a couch or lying on a bed somewhere, how many people can just walk up and put their head on your chest? Right? How many people in your life can do that? For me, there's only 5. Right? So there's my wife and my 4 kids. All right, so like if I'm sitting out at morning tea this morning and one of you comes and snuggles up to me and puts the head on my chest, there's going to be eyebrows raised, isn't there? All right? Only very few people have that privilege with you and with me. And here's the thing, my 4 kids are going to lose that privilege one day, aren't they? Like I don't go and put my head in my mum's chest anymore like I did when I was a little kid. So what this passage is getting at is there is a very intimate closeness, or as I'm calling it, a withness, all right, between the Father and the Son, God the Father and God the Son. Now we can add God the Holy Spirit into that as well, though this passage doesn't really discuss the Spirit too much. But here's the thing, all right? God the Father is Spirit. God the Spirit is Spirit, and God the Son was Spirit until he took on human flesh. And so what this means is that God the Father has no physical chest for the Son to lie on. So what does John mean when he says that the Son is in the bosom of the Father? Right? What it must mean is that they were wrapped up in each other's souls. Right? This is not a physical withness we're talking about here. It is way more intimate than that. It is a spiritual withness. And what this means is no child has ever had a relationship with their mother like Jesus has with the Father. Right? No wife has ever had a relationship with their husband like the Father has with the Son. Right? Even the best marriages on the planet don't come close to this, because you don't know your spouse in the way that the Father and the Son know each other. I mean, you don't know. We don't know anyone that intimately. Tim Keller puts it this way. He says, think of a time when you, in your life, where you felt truly seen, truly known, truly understood. All right? And then multiply that by about 1 billion, and you're getting close to the intimacy that the Father and the Son and the Spirit have had for all eternity. That's what this passage is telling us about God. But it gets even better than that. All right, you see, God is a perfect being. What that means is there's no sin in him. There's no selfishness. There's no nasty, snarky little comments here and there. There's no, using and abusing one another. So when it says that God the Son was in the bosom of God the Father, verse 18, what it means is the Father was pouring out all of his love and his power and his communication upon the Son in order to glorify the Son and make the Son happy. And in the same way, the Son was pouring out all his love and his power and his communication upon God the Father in order to glorify the Father and make the Father happy. Right? It is a relationship of incredible intimacy and central primacy. And this is what sets the Christian God apart from every other world religion. Right? The Christian God, the triune God, has been in a perfect, other person-centered relationship with himself for all eternity. No other God can claim that. No other God can claim this kind of eternal bliss. The reason being, no other God has felt deeply loved, completely understood, and wonderfully glorified. All right, what does that mean? It means being put on a pedestal like the triune God has. Every other god of every other religion had to create humans before they could feel loved or understood or appreciated. Right? Before creation, these other gods didn't feel love because there was no one to love. They didn't feel seen or understood because there was no one to see them or understand them. And they didn't feel glorified because there was no one to glorify them. Right? They needed to create in order to feel these things. But the God of the Bible has felt love, understanding, and appreciation within himself for all eternity. Right? The human mind cannot even begin to fathom what that must be like, to be so deeply loved, to be so completely known, and to be so wonderfully appreciated. And it's not just at a physical level, all right? It is at a spiritual level. It is a bliss beyond human comprehension. And that, brothers and sisters, is the wonder of the witness that God the Father and God the Son and God the Holy Spirit have had for all eternity. Right? That's who God is. The beauty of this witness, though, is it's not just something that we humans sit back and appreciate from a distance. Right? It's something we can enjoy ourselves. So let me explain. You see, if God has been in a loving relationship with himself for all eternity, what this means is that relating and communicating is part of the essence of ultimate reality. Now, what do I mean by that? All right, everything we see in the world around us is not actually part of ultimate reality. Now, why can I say that? It's because there was a time where all of this didn't exist. Right? Whether we think the earth is 6,000 years old or 600 million years old, there was still a time where this world did not exist. And so it can't actually be a part of ultimate reality, the physical world around us. All right? But God has always been there. He's always existed. And what that means is he is ultimate reality. But part of that ultimate reality is relating and communicating. That's what the Godhead has been doing. And here's the thing. When God made humans, he made us in his likeness, in his image. And part of what it means to be made in the image of God is to be relational beings. So while the material world may not be part of ultimate reality, you and I relating to one another is. In Genesis 1, we're told that when God created the world, every time he created something new, he said it was good. All right? So when he made the sky and the sea, it is good. When he made the sun and the moon, it is good. When he made the land and the animals, it is good. In Genesis 1, we're told that paradise is good. You would expect paradise to be good. But when you get to Genesis chapter 2, there's something in paradise that is not good. We're told it's not good. Now, it's not that God made a mistake, it's that he wasn't finished yet. And the thing that wasn't good was for the man to be alone. Because we're relational beings. Now, but here's the thing, all right? So we are designed for relationships. That's part of ultimate reality. But here's the thing. The degree to which you and I can enjoy witness, enjoy relationships, is the degree to which we relate to people like God relates to people. All right? The joy we get from witness comes from how loving and other person-centered we are. And sadly, this joy of witness has been fading in the West in recent decades, and it's been fading due to individualism. All right? Individualism says, oh, look, put all those relationships on the back burner, all right, and you just focus on the most important person in the world, which is you. Yet this so-called paradise we've tried to build in the West, this social experiment where we've pushed relationships to the periphery, it's unraveling before our very eyes. All right, social capital is at an all-time low in Western society. Now, look, there's always been a certain degree of not being able to trust people, but these days we don't trust anyone. And there's reason for this, really good reasons for this. I heard about an author this week. I hope to read this book. It sounds like a good book. It's by Hugh Helco. It's a business book and it's called On Thinking Institutionally. And in it he says that there have been over 3,000 cases, there's 3,000 examples in the last 10 to 15 years of businesses showing we should not trust businesses. Right? Things like Enron, Halliburton, not to mention all the banks during the GFC who ripped off people and other companies in order to make money for themselves. Friends, we have never been richer as a society. There has never been a society in human history in which so many people have had so much. We are ridiculously rich. Yet we've never been more miserable as a society. Right? Depression and anxiety are an all-time high at the moment, and that's even before the lockdowns, before the government stopped us from relating to one another. All the studies show that mental health declined during those lockdowns. The worst rates of mental health were in Victoria, and Victoria was the most locked down place on the planet for close to 6 months. Why is that? It's because you and I were built for relationships. And the joy we get from those relationships is contingent on how we treat others. There's an old parable, I think, that illustrates this the best. It's called the parable of the long spoons. Have you heard of this? The parable depicts people in heaven and in hell, both having an abundance of delicious food on offer for them. The thing is, the people in heaven and the people in hell are given eating instruments, all right, that are very difficult to use. So they're given these massive long spoons, and when you dig it into the food, when you bring it back to your mouth, you can't actually reach your mouth, and it just hits the side of your head and falls out. All right? This is what the parable is about. And it says that the people in hell spend all their days trying to feed themselves. They stick the spoon in the food, and they bring it back, and it just falls down every day, all day. The people in hell are sitting there starving and tormented by having this delicious food sitting just out of reach for them. The people in heaven spend all day feeding someone else, and they are satisfied for all eternity. Now, friends, which of these two groups are you more like? Right? Are you following the way of our society that says, look after yourself, feed yourself? Or are you experiencing the joy that we're supposed to experience of loving other person-centered relationships? Right? That is the essence of ultimate reality. Being selfish is not the essence of ultimate reality. Looking after others is. And that's where we find our joy. Now, here's the thing. All people can experience the joy of other person-centered witness with others. You don't actually have to be a Christian to do that. But there is an advantage of being a Christian, all right? And part of that advantage comes from the hope that we have of enjoying this kind of bliss that God enjoys with this. So in John chapter 17, Jesus prays an incredible prayer. I think it's the best prayer in the Bible. And part of what makes it the best prayer in the Bible is that it's a prayer about me and you. Right? So did you know that when Jesus walked the earth some 2,000 years ago, he prayed for you? All right, let me read to you. This is John 17, verse 20. Jesus says, "My prayer is not for them alone," his disciples. "I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message." All right, so you and I as Christians believe in Jesus through the disciples' message. Jesus is praying for us in the second half of John chapter 17. It's amazing. But that's not the really cool bit. Right? The really cool bit is in verse 24. Jesus says, "Father, I want those you have given me," all right, that's Christians, "I want those you have given me to be with me where I am and to see my glory, the glory you have given me because you loved me before the creation of the world." So what this prayer is saying if you're a Christian, when you become a Christian, all right, you are invited to one day experience the same level of love and understanding and appreciation, the same kind of love, understanding, appreciation that the Father experiences with the Son. All right? As soon as we step into heaven, we will step into the eternal joy. Right? Heaven goes on forever and ever. We will step into the eternal joy that the Father and the Son have had with each other for all eternity. Now, do you understand that part of what God will be doing in heaven is loving us and seeing us and glorifying us, just like we will be loving him and understanding him and glorifying him. That's what we're going to enjoy in heaven. An even better witness than we have on this world. Right? That is the awesomeness of the Christian hope. But if that's not mind-blowing enough, right, to experience this perfect, intimate, loving, other person-centered witness, what gets even better is how we get it. What I mean is what it cost God to bring that witness to us. So like I said at the beginning, this passage answers the two big questions in life, all right? First is, who is God? God is three persons in one Godhead who has enjoyed a loving, other person-centered relationship with himself for all eternity. That is ultimate reality, right? But question number two is, how do we get near to this God? Now, the reason we ask this question is because we know we don't put others first. We put others on the back burner. We know we do that. We don't worry about feeding others. We worry more about feeding ourselves more often than not, don't we? Right? We are deeply selfish from time to time. And because of that, deep down, the human heart is not sure if a perfect being like God will have us. Now, here's the thing. Given you've all walked into a Christian church today, there's a pretty good chance that you've heard of Jesus' death on the cross before. Those with a bit of biblical literacy know that the cross was Jesus dying in place of his people. Now, when I explain it like that, it sounds a bit like a financial transaction, doesn't it? And it is, in a sense. All right, on the cross, Jesus took all of our sin on himself. But when we begin to understand the relationship that the Father has with the Son for all eternity, our understanding of the cost involved of procuring us salvation deepens. What do I mean by this? Look, in the book of Revelation, now Revelation is written by the Apostle John, the same guy that wrote our passage today. Right? In the book of Revelation, John refers to Jesus not as the Word, but as the Lamb. Okay, the Lamb who was slain. And here's what it says. This is Revelation 13:8. The Lamb who was slain from the creation of the world. Now understand what this means. We need our thinking caps on for a second, all right? What this means is when God created the world, he knew his creatures would sin against him. He knew humans would kick him off his throne. And so when God was creating the land and the sea and saying it is good, and when he was creating even Adam and Eve and saying it is very good, all right, alongside that joy of creation was the knowledge that we would sin. And the Father and the Son said to each other, look, what are we going to do about this? Someone is going to have to pay for their sin and rebellion. And so what the Father and the Son determined for all eternity was that the Father would pour out his full wrath upon the Son. And the Son would be forsaken by the Father and die the death of a sinner. Now let's just think about that for a second. All right? How would you feel to give your child over to death? One preacher said it would overthrow his sanity. It's not just to lose a child, as devastating as that is, but actually give that child over to death. Lose his sanity. I think he's right. That's how I feel. But here's the thing. I've only known my kids for around 16 years. 20 years ago, they weren't in my life. All right? Yet the Son has been in the Father's life, in the Father's bosom, for all of eternity. And on top of that, it's not just a physical relationship they have. It is the deepest, most intimate relationship you can get, a spiritual one. And on top of that, it's a perfect relationship. So what this means is, God created you and me knowing full well that the Father would one day have to voluntarily give up his Son to death to save us. Amazing love. How can it be that you, my King, should die for me? Now, friends, as I finish, there may be some here today who don't yet know the wonder, the joy, and the hope of witness with God. You may be struggling to have that kind of joy with witness with others. In John 17 verse 20, Jesus says only those who believe in him get to have that future hope and get to understand the present joy in its entirety. And so what I'd like to do today, this is a guest service, I want to close with the opportunity for people to enjoy this witness, enjoy a relationship with God, maybe for the first time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pray a prayer in a few moments. I'll read it out first so you know what I'm going to pray, and then I'm going to give us an opportunity. I'll say it again, one line at a time. And if you are feeling that this prayer resonates with you, that you would like to explore what it means to have this kind of relationship with God and to have that flow out into our other relationships, then you get an opportunity to pray that prayer in the quietness of your heart. You don't have to say it out loud. You can just repeat that line in the quietness of your heart where God will hear it. All right, so the prayer goes like this. It's just 5 quick lines. It says, "Dear God, when I reflect on how deep your love for me is, I realise I have not returned that love. Please forgive me for this. Help me to love you and my neighbour the way you have loved me in the cross. Amen." All right? So I'm going to pray that again now, line by line. And if that resonates with you, if you would like this kind of relationship with God, then repeat each line in your heart with me. Let's pray. Dear God, when I reflect on how deep your love is for me, I realise I have not returned that love. Please forgive me for this. Help me to love you and to love my neighbour the way you have loved me in the cross. Amen. I'll hand back to Malcolm, but if you'd like to talk more, Malcolm and I are here after the service.